Before I start this story, let me tell you that I don't believe in the paranormal, but something definitely went down at a place I used to live about a year ago that to this day I still can't explain. It was part of an old Victorian house that got split into 4 smaller apartments. Each apartment had real nice high ceilings and its own laundry room. Our laundry room was the only one that had attic access. Not like the usual pull down stairs or anything. We're talking about a 3x3 square cutout of the ceiling held up by 2 long planks on the attic side that were nailed into it. Inside the attic, there were 2 beams that were nailed along the outside of a hole to keep the square in place. In order to get into the attic, you would have to completely lift the square clear of the 2 beams and push it or twist it to the side. A couple of months after we moved in, we noticed that the attic access was open, like perched crookedly across the runner beams. We figured someone went in there to inspect before we moved in and forgot to close it, and it just took us a while to notice. We tried to close it and couldn't on our own. We didn't have a ladder, and there was nothing besides a washer and dryer to stand on, which didn't make us, or even our 6'3" downstairs neighbour, tall enough to get it shut. So we had to pile boxes and a bunch of stuff up and hold it still while our neighbour climbed up and shut it. Fast forward another few months and I was out of the apartment hanging out at my boyfriend's place. I got a frantic call from my roommate saying that she heard a whomp noise and went to check it out, and the attic was open again. She sent me a picture and it looked as if someone had pushed it up enough to clear the beams, then slid it back enough so that one of the beams that held it up when it was shut was angled out of the hole. When I was very little, I always woke up in the middle of the night. This was a common occurrence for me and would easily be settled by me going into my parents' room and sleeping there. I had lived in this old country house all my life. I was born there. It was built in the 17th century and was owned by a wealthy family. I had loved it. It was my wonderful home that everyone seemed to love. But for some reason, no one ever felt alone in it. The dogs would bark for no reason. The cat would stare at nothing. And the automatic light in one of the hallways to a bedroom would go on and off repeatedly. Well, one night I ran into my parents' room and stopped for a short second, glancing into my sister's bedroom across the hallway. My sister wasn't in. She was at her boyfriend's, yet I had a need to just glance into it. And to my shock, a girl around the same age as me was stood in the doorway. I couldn't see her face. It was just too dark, but she was wearing some sort of a nightgown and had long hair down to her waist, just like I did at the time. I was around 8 years old back then, and my sisters weren't much older, meaning it could have not been any of them. As she stood still, just watching, instantly I panicked and ran for my parents' door, but didn't take my eyes off of the unknown girl. And to my shock, she jumped out of sight to the other side of the room. I vividly remember not being able to open my parents' door as it was jammed, and then finally pushing it with all my might to get it open, then jumping onto the bed and quickly going to sleep. I never said anything to anyone about the girl, not until I was much older, as I was afraid to admit to myself that it was real. I kept blaming it all on being a dream, but I knew it wasn't. Years passed and I grew older, became more aware of the house and the atmosphere it had to it. My friends would complain about being scared and say it was definitely haunted, along with my family members. I told my mom of the girl I once saw, to which she replied saying she once saw the exact same person. I was in shock that I wasn't the only one, and that of all people, my mother had seen her. She said one night she woke up and stood beside her bed was a little girl looking down on her, but she wasn't scared of her. She said it just looked like her when she was little, so blamed it on a dream like I had for so many years. What's scary is the fact that the little girl once looked like my mom, and then the other time looked like me. I found the deeds for the house and looked to see if anything had happened, but it was a long list of wills from men of the past inhabitants, none saying of a little girl. I don't live in that house anymore, but oddly miss it. I wonder if the new family that's there have seen her as well. My story takes place several years ago in the summer of 2012. I had recently graduated high school, and my friend had found us a summer job working for his dad at a warehouse making boxes. I had recently started learning how to drive, so being behind the wheel still made me somewhat nervous. One day my friend's father gave me a call saying we had to show up to work at 4 a.m. I went to go pick up my friend that morning around 3:20 a.m. The streets were lonely and had an eerie vibe to them. I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by grape fields, so the town always seems spooky, but at night, it's literally a ghost town. I was driving to the warehouse, my friend sitting in the passenger seat, half awake, as was I. I arrived at a stop sign at a location that is known for many fatal car accidents. Across the street was an old abandoned school that was always rumored to be haunted. I felt a chill run down my spine, but didn't pay too much attention and continued on driving. With no car in sight and my friend asleep, I noticed an old mailbox by the side of the road and what appeared to be an old lady walking towards it. She wore a long black dress as it dragged on the ground, and she was pale white. I couldn't believe my eyes, and as I drove past her, it felt as if time was moving slower than usual, and I could see she was smiling, but a very scary smile that still gives me the chills to this day. I tried waking up my friend, but couldn't manage to do so in time as she disappeared soon after, but I told him everything. He did not believe me. However, his father told me that there are lots of ghost sightings down that road, and what I saw must have been a ghost of a lady that might have lived near that area, and she simply was just going to get the mail. I refuse to go down that road at night now, but still can't get the image out of my head of the lady in the black dress and her evil smile. At age 15, I had lived in 13 different houses. My family rented, and I didn't believe in ghosts at this stage because I'd never had any sort of experience with them, although I was open to it. The first night we moved into this house, I was 15 and my younger sister was 12. On the first night sleeping there, I hadn't put my bed together, so I just slept on my mattress on the floor. I had 2 cats then, and one of them was curled up on the end of my bed. I then started hearing whispering in my right ear. I can only explain it like an earphone in one ear. My left ear wasn't hearing anything at all, which freaked me out. Then, I saw my cat was hissing and growling at something behind me. His eyes were so big, and he was so frightened. The whispering went on for a good 40 seconds or so. I couldn't make out what this thing was saying to me. Anyway, the next night I experienced the same thing, and I ran to my mom's room and asked my father to sleep in my bed so I could sleep with my mom. As I was falling asleep, I heard my father come back into the room after 2 hours of me being there, and he was walking around the bed like he was looking for something, and my eyes were shut the whole time. He then walked around to my mom's side of the bed, then my side again, and was repeating this a couple of times, so I finally opened my eyes to ask what he was looking for. By this stage he was standing really close to my head, and there was no one there. I sat straight up and saw a shadow across the room on the wall. That was the moment I realized ghosts existed and I'm being haunted. We lived there for 9 months, and I have way too many stories to tell you, but the one that stood out was when my friend slept over and we were kind of wanting some ghostly things to happen, but that night nothing did. In the morning, we woke up early and the sun was shining in my room. All doors were shut. In my room, I had 3 doors, one leading to the lounge room, one to my sister's room, and one to the kitchen. We rolled towards each other to say good morning, and in that second, my bed started violently shaking so much so I could feel my wooden boards under my bed shifting and bumping. It went on for 10 seconds or so, and I couldn't even breathe, I was so scared. What it felt like to me was someone was lying under my bed, kicking and punching the boards extremely hard. After it stopped, my friend and I had the courage to look under my bed. I know, horror movie moment. And all there was my bag full of clothing. That was so violent, and throughout 9 months, I constantly felt like whatever this thing was, wanted me out of their house. So that's it for today's Halloween special. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Until tomorrow's Halloween special, goodbye.